Well, at the beginning of COVID last year, my stepfather was having really tough times with his cancer, and it was beating him. In April last year, he passed. So my mom, newly widowed, living by herself in Taylor, Texas, which here's Shreveport. This is the path to Taylor, Texas, which is just north of Austin. Small town that time forgot. She's living by herself down there. We're hoping for the best that she's able to do it. And she's not old, but she's older. That lasted, we were going every week. Every week we'd drive down there, check on her. It's 5.5 hours each way. We'd get up at 6 in the morning, drive, take her to lunch, get her groceries, get her set up for the week at her house, and then head back to Shreveport that night. Did that for all through, ever since then, till we just went Saturday, this weekend, to see her. Well, in September last year, we get a call from her friend. My mom's in the hospital. She's had a diabetic situation, was found at her door, unconscious. And anyway, she gets in the hospital. She's in a really bad way. She ends up having to go to a rehab center and ultimately to a nursing home, diagnosed with Alzheimer's, and she's kind of fading, She's still able to do stuff, but she doesn't remember, what she said 5 minutes ago, much less anything else. So kind of been a tough, painful situation. This whole floor is about that chapter of this same saga being on the road, because it's the same thing. So if the kids were around, they were going on the same road with us. Me and my wife would make it without them, but if we could, we'd all go, and we all did whenever we could. That's what this floor is about, is kind of the journey. In this case, this is our friend Maxie's vehicle, Mellow. Again, same thing, photo journal of things we saw along this road, which a little bit different, honestly, than the other trips. A lot of the other trips were interstate driven, which it already bypasses cities, so they're meant to push you through. This road is Highway 79 that cuts through every tiny town through Texas that time has forgotten. And because of that, the scenery along the way is very much rural and empty, like you see, or just forgotten altogether. And it kind of led to this story of really decay, was this whole floor, and leading to my mom and the decay of her memory and the decay of her abilities. But it kind of was what that journey was, and that road trip was about this kind of decay. But still, it's fitting with everything else. It was a long road trip every time. Got to know this road really well.
That you did. When you feel a curve and stuff, and you can, know, all right, it's gonna be maybe 15 more minutes, and then I'm there at the front gate.
Right.
The red lights and stuff like that. Like, all right, now.
Yeah. Exactly.
Cool.
Man, again, some of these, not to speak for Larson's stuff, but this one I think is, one of these that is taken. I might have even taken this photo that we're driving along and I'm in the passenger seat just clicking right out the window as we're doing 60, 70 miles an hour, just click it. But odd, weird things along the highway that you just don't ever see, and they're invisible to you, which is kind of the theme of the show, is stop, look around, because even for you going to work, you probably go to work the same way every day. It's all routine, mundane. Go a different way home today. I bet you'll see something interesting.
Yeah, no, it's Shreveport. I'm sure we will see something interesting.
I'm hoping it's really good interesting.
Oh, good interesting.
So again, more of the scenery from kind of rural Texas.
The only real through line in the show is the road, and it's kind of like all the kind of experiences we had. And the road being, not not always pretty, not
Yeah.
always where you want to be or what you want to be doing, but
But always interesting.
always interesting.
Excellent. Like that's that's the Brazos River. You're 70 miles an hour right there. You'll miss it if if you're not paying attention. We actually had to turn back so I could get this photo because we bypassed it. And I was holding my camera ready to go and missed it. We had to turn back to get it. A really beautiful terrain, forgotten old body shop. They accept all insurance claims though.
And now they still have like the new banners and stuff where they open up.
Grand opening.
Yeah, very public.
There's a line in our little story about the show that talks about the hotels boasting a vacancy that the locals know is permanent. And that's kind of how all this feels, that it's just, I mean, there's another hotel that I'm sure has vacancies.
That's right. Like the old downtown.
Yeah, the old downtown.
And another piece of it too, like kind of traveling, all of this distance and making the drive, kind of seeing the commonalities in all of these places, like all of them being very different and unique in their own ways, but also, the kinds of things, the similarities that would keep you grounded, be that the circus peanuts at every truck stop, or some of the architecture or foliage, or
Architecturally, I mean, it's one uniform stretch across all these drives is the boom of the 30s and 40s and 50s in America that populated all of these places all at the same time. I mean, there's a lot of these that are vintage buildings that I'm certain that building came at the same time.
Sure, like
As many of the others did that
Yeah.
we've seen. Same as that downtown was probably the same vintage as that, which could likely be the same vintage of a lot of downtown Shreveport too.
I mean, that's what the highway was. That was the connection of everything in America. And most of these like shops and stuff were on the corners of those highways.
They were, before the interstates, they were the main streets
Right.
in a lot of places, which has been the interesting thing with this trip to Texas is it's still cutting through those small main streets. Just a lot of those main streets are kind of boarded up and empty, but the road still cuts through there.
Still stories and stuff. Be solved. And you guys brought back one, with you.
Yeah.
Still telling those stories in those places. So they're not forgotten. Yeah, I mean, they're still here.
So over here is really kind of my mom's house, or getting close to it. That was another little red barn found along the way through Texas, the broken windmill. And then this gets into my mom and her house. So this is my mom's house that she's not in anymore, but that's the house. These are things from her house. That's now Larson's dog, Sugar. But Sugar's been the road companion through all these adventures.
she's been with us on
Yep.
most of these drives.
Yeah. The clutter of my mom's house. And then some really beautiful pieces Larson did about my mom and my stepdad. I want to say something about the...
Yeah, this piece is like inspired from one of the visits we had to see someone, and we were at the nursing home, and the whole experience kind of dystopian along the way, because in the beginning we would go to see her, but we had to stand outside of her window while she's inside because of COVID, and of course, makes sense, but eventually this was like the first time that we got to see her without that barrier between us. And other than that, we hadn't really seen her in a very long time, like many years. And so it was this I was so grateful to get to exist in the same space with her, but she was neither really here nor there. Her mind was, she was here, but her mind was somewhere else, or had kind of drifted away. So just this moment where, in keeping with kind of the theme of the rest of the show, it's like this very fleeting moment that if you don't stop to kind of notice it, it's gone, and wanting to just honor that moment in her in this way.
I think it's beautiful. I think art helps you capture that moment too.
Thank you.
For sure. All right, let's go upstairs. For Shreveport, it's got a fair amount of Meyerman sketches in this piece. Obviously, Southern Maid takes a prominent place here with 4 or 5 things related to it. It's house favorite. Probably your favorite too.
That's right. It's a statement here in Shreveport that we have to have something.
Exactly. So we've got some food-related places, the old Mercados, George's Grill, it's personal, where me and Max and Larsson and Dolly would go get pancakes for breakfast, ride our bikes to it. That's awesome. Obviously, Herbie K's is a local fave. Maryland's Place, inside and outside. Then we got some liquor joints here, the Cub, the Round Bar, Lucky Liquor, Great Raft, a little bit of downtown parades, the Rebel, the old Corinthian Lodge on Texas. And then another one of those kind of beautiful moments is, getting to work early, and that's literally my parking lot and the view from where I go 5 days a week, every week, that same place. But it's still kind of interesting and fitting with the topics of the show.
Right, 'cause that's home to you too.
Yeah, it is home. So, and then the next section is literally home. So we're going to have a couple of these moments. This one will have a picnic table at it. It's a place to pause. This is a view from our house, looking up at the pine trees in our yard. And then that section is really things from right at our home. So all these moments happen at the house.
Yeah, and all of it, these little moments, kind of, however mundane they may have seemed in the moment, like finding inspiration in all of them. Like maybe it is looking at the hawk in the telescope, or maybe it's just sitting outside and there's a bird that's on the bird feeder for just like a second, but it's like, oh my god, I have to capture that in some way.
Or sugar in the bush.
Yeah, exactly.
So, with your cutout pieces and stuff, how do you know, what do you want in the foreground and what do you want in the background?
And that is a heated conversation inside my head. It's a 3 to 5 hour argument I have with myself as I'm cutting those out on what needs to be in front or not. And then it's all based on, there's 8 layers in there, so I've only got the back layers whole. I've got 7 chances of what could be where and what needs to be in front, but it's an ongoing heated argument that happens in my head about what goes in front. So I try to stick with, the closest thing to you being in the front, the furthest things in the back. But then it just depends on, if you want emphasis on something else or you're limited to the layers, and then you really got to make some editorial choices. Some good, some bad. We'll see how everybody reacts to it.
I think that's me because
Who won the inner argument?
So, because when I'm walking past them, obviously they're 3-dimensional, but they're always like they're moving. So it's always something else, that you can look at. It's catching your eye a different way.
That's the interesting thing to me, that whole process of sitting there live, sketching this 3-dimensional reality, putting it in 2 dimensions, and then printing it and making it 3-dimensional again is a weird, it's like the Willy Wonka machine that pixelates you, sends you across, and repixelates you. It's that, basically, whatever that was called.
It's a cool process. I like it.
And then this side was New York. We kind of ended with, our home studios, if you will. So Larsson in New York with his desk, me in Shreveport with my desk. And then these are some of the things around that we normally have at our desk, but they specifically relate to the show. Like this was early sketch that showed the entry sequence. So you'll notice that wall down there with the mural we were seeing. So that's where the Along for the Ride logo is. This is the new wall. Both of these walls are new to kind of force people in and then start the reveal of the journey. Kind of the architect in me wanted to include some kind of architectural juice there.
Like how you have them like going through a certain path, force them in this way, now they're turning left.
That's right. But without that, you could open the doors and you'd see everything.
Everything, that's right.
It's kind of like walking in right here, you can see it all. We wanted it to be a little bit more of a
guided to like a path and stuff.
yeah, I guess a journey for them as well, rather than what they normally would expect.
Right.
But we ended with some of our desks with our things in it.
It's cool. So there's Prismacolor, there's Copic markers down here. These are like tools that you can find, and and just,
Normal stuff,
That's
man.
right. Just get with it. Look, this is awesome.
Thick, thin pens,
That's right.
simple watercolors, sketchbooks, journals, scrapbooks. Those things I like to read.
Let's look at some of these books here for you guys. That's right. So this is what's inside of the artist's mind. So you guys need to know this stuff. Or Michelangelo, he's one of my
Michelangelo.
He's awesome. So
Le Corbusier, one of my favorite architects there. And then like the Ozarks.
It's good. So get into this stuff and look. And if your work is really great, it transitions through time. So there's people that still study Michelangelo and stuff. So you can't beat that.
Still studying Corbusier.
That's right. Show this to you guys.
It actually is a fabulous little book about a chapel on the hill in France that Le Corbusier designed. But it's got sketches and words and stuff. Pretty neat stuff.
Awesome. And the golden rule too, so don't forget that.
That's right, the golden section.
That's right.
Portion system last year. We get a bonus start today. Same with Larsson and his work. These were process pieces about assembling the show and some of how we were thinking about arranging the show.
Some process sketches.
That was the original of what you saw downstairs.
And just kind of taking it through.
Very delicate paper too.
The fun thing with this is the paper I use in my work architecturally. It's this golden tracing paper that it's not wildly popular. I'm hanging on to this. This is a relic from the past, but it's nice to have seen Larsson pick it up and use it and incorporate it with some of his work too.
It's got a great buttery kind of feel to it, drawing on it with pencil in particular. And it also is just like a really nice, rich yellow that I used in quite a few of the pieces around. I don't know if
The
there's
dinos downstairs.
the dinos.
Alright, so you got Willie Nelson. Here we go.
Oh yeah. Yeah, some assorted reading there.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, book about Maltese had to learn.
You need to know because you gotta cut those dogs' hair and stuff.
Exactly. I was aware of this treasure.
If you guys don't know, this is one of the outlaws. He was there with like Waylon Jennings and some Johnny Cash and stuff. Really, really good songwriter, great artist. If you guys don't know.
Back to our early discussion at the lawn over there. About just keeping on trying. Well, Willie had 13 albums that flopped before he had a good one. So, and Willie is a hero now.
He is.
Well-known legend.
Mm-hmm. So look, blocks, stamps and stuff. That's right. Did you guys make these?
Just for the show.
All right, awesome. That's awesome.
And this was a section on New York.
So this is Larson's section right here.
That's his,
Yes, that's from my desk in Brooklyn.
All right.
that's his office in Brooklyn.
There we go. So it's a plethora of books
Love
and
reading.
stuff. So you never stop learning. One thing about being an artist. It's awesome.
Yeah, it's super. I think that's like another thing for me about kind of being an artist. Like when I was in school, it was like constantly work, and producing stuff. you're kind of doing it though like in a vacuum in a way, and then once you get out, you know, you kind of just have to live life and experience things to illustrate, because without those experiences that you're kind of pulling from along your process, it doesn't have quite as much weight or meaning. So in just living life and traveling to places, doing things that are not just art making or absorbing other artists' content, like you are adding to your encyclopedic knowledge of things to pull from and the things that make you who you are as an artist.
I find the same in my work too. You know, I learned a lot of architectural history in school, but until I had the chance to go to these places, especially the ones in overseas places, feeling it, being there, wow, it literally is like an education just in a short amount of time, just being face to face with something you've studied, learned about, researched, but then to be there and feel it and experience it is a whole different education. Like, man, they didn't teach me that, but that's about the coolest thing I've ever seen.
Right, it's like you put your hand on it. That's another form of like education for yourself, you know.
Yeah.
It's like you're touching it, now you're connected with it. You've studied this stuff like that. Now you got to put your hands there. It's almost like you're there with the master as he's like getting
exactly.
or something, you know.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And this one is right at Larsson Street. Right here is the street. That's
He's
right
right
there.
there.
It's half a block down that street is his home.
I love this one. You have, this is like at the corner, so this building is like at the end of the block, and it goes back. And I love the dimensionality here of the streets receding into perspective, and the way that you kind of group these different elements.
While you're looking at this is just one in particular, not to cry, but like this light pole, it's in the foreground. But I like to cut out the layers so that it stacks up. It has some blue to all the way up. But when it's in front and it's thin, you gotta cut that joker out.
I know.
7 more times. All the way to the end.
Yeah, because that was a lot of cutting, and then like you're gluing on top of it too. You know, so it's like an X-Acto knife.
Yeah.
So
And everything is cut by hand, so none of these are laser cut.
That's
This
right.
is
that's all
just
like
these
that.
hands.
That's right, and then it's like many days you're like this.
Come on, work.
Open anything else. It's awesome.
I've
But
still got, I haven't for the last 6 weeks been able to feel the tip of this finger. I still can't. It's
No.
got calluses so
stuff,
bad.
yeah, from pulling that
From
blade.
that X-Acto.
Yeah. But the work, you know, when it comes out, you can't beat it. You know, it's for all that pain and stuff, but I mean, look at it. It's phenomenal.
The other interesting thing with the show, just a total side note, is we because it's this show about the road, it's really every man's show. I mean, we've all been in a car, we've all been on the road. It really doesn't matter your socioeconomic level. It's something universal that we all are familiar with, we all know. The work in the show is universal, and then the way that it's done. So we're all on these 2-inch birch panels, which aren't an exotic material to display. It's just a birch panel. This one, same thing. It's just flipped to the other side, where you can now have a shadow box to put these 3-dimensional ones in, but still get the birch panel. So try to leave the edges exposed, leave the natural kind of look to all of it. So it really kind of takes the mystery out of an art show and just makes it like this is just normal stuff that we all live and breathe and see every day. It's one of my favorite pieces right there. If I had to have a favorite piece of the show, that might be it.
That one gave me grief along the way.
I really like
Taking
that
it
one.
to finish, but I appreciate it. And I like where honestly where everything kind of ended out in the show. I feel excited about it.
It all looks great. Like, very interesting. Each one is interesting.
Thank
Each
you.
one has its own little story to tell, like what happened over here, or what is spurred, or what inspired you to the color palette.
The other interesting thing, it's not on these yet, but we have labels for, everything that has the title on it, but it's literally a little interstate sign. So it's got the same format looking everything that the interstate signs on.
That's really good.
So that's kind of the show.
Yeah.
Cool. All right, well, thank you for giving us the grand tour.
Sure, of course. Anytime.
That's right. And thank you for spending your time with us, telling us about it and giving us inspiration. Awesome.
Thanks
Come
for-
back, everybody come back to the show. It opens November 12th, 5 o'clock, and runs through January 15th.
That's right. So catch us down here at Artspace. You'll really be glad that you came down here. Come along for the ride. That's right.
Exactly.
Are you along for the ride?
You along for the ride, guys? All right. Thank you. We'll see you next time.